The only people who don't want to disclose the truth are people with something to hide.
Tonight we're talking with Susan Daniels. She is the private eye that discovered that Obama is using a Social Security number that is fraudulent, and also a selective service number that's fraudulent. Let me tell you a little bit about Susan Daniels. She'll be joining us here in about 5 or so minutes. I found this article about her in the Cleveland Seniors, and she's from Ohio. And they wrote this nice little piece about her that I'm going to share. It really sets it up nicely. If Sam Spade had been Samantha, Cleveland's female private eye, that's the headline. Charlie's Angels, Pepper Anderson, Jessica Fletcher. Well, these are the names that come to mind when you talk about women's PIs, private investigators. Another name to consider and add to this list is the real-life private investigator, Susan Daniels. Like any other job, she says, you learn how to do it. Most of it's common sense and not really very mysterious. And she says that most investigators are not really social beings, but they appear to be. And she says that this description applies to her, too, saying, you deal with a lot of people, but it's short-term. They're people you never see again. She's a self-described loner, so this is kind of a good business for her because she says she works best with very little direction. She works almost entirely for law firms, and whether it's criminal defense work or civil litigation, she's hired to help the firm win their case. And she's worked for both the prosecution and the defense in cases involving things like insurance fraud. And she's also called on often to locate missing people, and she says that she is successful 95% of the time. I'd say that's a pretty good track record. She tells a story of a man who was suing a relative because he said he was hurt at a family function. Now, the man who was being sued said, I'm not settling. He refused to settle, even though his insurance company was willing to give the $30,000 just to close the case. Well, the case went to a jury, and Susan's surveillance work paid off. Get this. She filmed this guy, supposedly the victim, the injured, walking steps, driving, and doing side jobs while he was supposedly off work. She said one picture really is worth 1,000 words. It doesn't seem to occur to people that there really could be someone watching. In this case, the man got exactly what he deserved, nothing. So she's done some very interesting cases, and really to date her most interesting one, I think, is the fact that she has discovered the fraudulent use of Social Security and selective service numbers by Barack Hussein Obama. She was mentioned in Dr. Corsi's book, Where's the Birth Certificate? The case that Barack Obama is not eligible to be president, and he quotes her copiously in the introduction of the book, is talking about the fact that she, along with another private investigator who worked independently of one another, they were asking why Obama is using a Social Security number that's set aside for applicants in Connecticut, while there's no record that he ever had a mailing address in that state. In addition, the records indicate the number was issued between 1977 and 79, and yet Obama's earliest employment reportedly was in 1975 when he was scooping ice cream in Oahu, Hawaii, in an ice cream shop, Baskin Robbins. She's got the details on that. She's going to be telling us about that. She's also done quite a few interviews. Jack Cashel has written about her in several of his articles, as well as I believe she was interviewed by the Post email. The folks who are searching for answers to we don't need answers. We've got the proof about Obama's background and his lies about his eligibility to be president. She's been mentioned in many of these articles, many of these stories. So anyway, she's going to be joining us in just a little bit. I just wanted to give you a little bit of a heads up about Susan Daniels. She contacted me and said, hey, I would love to come and talk with your audience about this. And I said, well, hey, we'd love to have you. So we had a slot available tonight. She was available, and it just came together like karma. Instant karma. Yeah, that's right. So anyway. Okay, I think we have our guest with us right now, Susan Daniels, private investigator with a very interesting background and a very interesting story to tell us tonight. Susan Daniels, welcome to the program.
Oh, thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
We're just delighted to have you. We really are. And I want to say that I was reading some of the background material about you, and what an interesting life you've had. I mean, maybe you could kind of acquaint our listeners a little bit with your background before we jump into the matter at hand.
Well, I have 7 children. I was widowed at 30. I went to school, got a bachelor's and a master's, and certified as a paralegal while raising 7 kids, and ended up at this point in my life as a private investigator, and have been doing this for 18 years. So I pretty much covered everything there is to do in a very short period of time.
It's pretty amazing to me. And, you know, one of the things that I found interesting, I was reading the article about you in Cleveland Seniors. Of course,
Yeah.
the article is, you know, it's a few years old, but nevertheless, the information isn't. And it was telling about how you had to provide health insurance for your children.
Right.
And the way that you tell our listeners what you ended up doing in order to provide health insurance for your kids, and how it ultimately brought you to where you are today.
Well, I'm a fairly creative person, which has helped me an enormous amount in my job, because creativity is one of the elements of being a private investigator. I remarried briefly after I was widowed, and it didn't last only a couple of years. Well, then I was without any kind of health insurance for my children, and they were still all very young at the time. And we went that way for probably about 4 years, and I thought, you know, you're really playing with fire here. One of these kids is going to get hurt, and you're going to end up losing your house to medical bills. And I remembered, now I had gotten my undergraduate degree in 1978, and I remembered that medical insurance was very cheap at college. Not only that, it was like a flat rate that included, you know, any dependents. So I decided to go back to school and work on a master's degree, and I did it strictly for the medical coverage. And I think at that time it was like $75 a quarter to cover all 8 of us. And after 2 years, I had a job by then with health coverage and a master's degree.
And what a wonderful story. I mean, really, necessity is the mother of invention.
It absolutely is. I'm one of these people that, you know, I don't want to hear anybody whine to me about anything, because there's a way, if you're determined enough, there's a way to get through it and get out of it. You know, sitting around and whining like half of our country is doing now I find it extremely disturbing to me, because when I was going to school, I had to get the medical coverage as a graduate student. I had to be a full-time student, and Ann was working, and which meant that I didn't even start to do homework till like 9:30 or 10 o'clock at night, and yet I did it. I went summers, I went Saturdays. I mean, I was determined to get it done and get that degree. You know, it started as medical insurance, but I ended up getting the degree, and that has worked very well for me.
Boy, that's a real testimonial to rugged self-individualism, pulling yourself up by the bootstraps, and
Right.
not looking to government to hand it to you.
I take enormous pride in the fact that I have never taken a penny from the government and never will. You know, I get Social Security now, but I paid into that all those years.
That's right.
So I'm only getting back what I put in. I have never taken anything nor ever wanted anything from the government. You know, I don't need their help. I am self-reliant and raise my kids to be the same way.
Don't you love the fact that they call Social Security an entitlement program?
Yeah. Don't even let me start on that. It's not an entitlement. It's what we put into it and earned. I just feel bad for the people that are coming along that are paying into it and will never get a penny out of it because they've stolen it. But they've just emptied the coffers completely.
I know, and it's coming to that too. And
yes,
I understand. I also understand that there's a move afoot to also get control of everybody's retirement funds too, our 401ks, our IRAs. Yeah.
Well, I wasn't smart enough to ever get a job that had any of those, so and the stock market going up and down doesn't bother me either because I never had any money to invest in that. I mean, I was just grateful that I always made enough to get my kids raised. And that was all I was single-minded. That was my goal.
Yeah. Wow. Well, let's talk about how you got involved as a private investigator. I mean, you got a master's degree in a different field. So how did you move over to private investigating?
Andrea, I had no intention of ever becoming a private investigator. I mean, if somebody would have told me 20 years ago this is what I'd end up doing, I would have laughed because I had never considered it. But I was out of a job, and somebody called me who was a retired federal agent who had a company and asked if I could come. I looking for work. I'm looking for anything to do. And he said, I have a couple of jobs I need done. Would you do them for me? And so I did. And then a friend of his needed help and hired me full-time. Well, in Ohio, you have to work full-time under somebody else's license before you're allowed to go take the state test to become a private investigator. That's what I did. I went and got my license, and then a couple of months later, he got rid of me and hired his son-in-law to take my job. So the timing could not have been better. I started with one client, and it took 4 years before I even started to build a decent client base. It's not an easy thing to start a company.
No, it isn't. I've done that, and you end up you do the work, you do the marketing, you do the bookkeeping, you know all your records. Yeah, it's really at least three full-time jobs in one. Yeah. I still have to do. I mean, I still do it all, and once a year I have somebody do my taxes for me. I mean, you never make enough that you could have. That you could hire anybody else to help you. And the paperwork is, I hate it, but somebody's got to do it. So you'd rather be on your own as Susan Daniels private investigators, than you would working for maybe a large law firm in their research department?
Are you kidding? I work almost exclusively for lawyers and law firms, and I can take them in small doses.
Well,
no,
okay, so go ahead, please.
Yeah, no, I've discovered something very interesting about attorneys. They really, now the ones I have as clients, I love because I will not work for jerks. I just won't. I don't need the money bad enough to put up with idiots. But and the ones I have are very good about. They just give me a case and tell me, this is the case, go do what you do. And what that means, go find out everything I can, good, bad, indifferent. But there are lawyers who want to tell me how to do a case, and they don't have a clue. And they want to tell me the wrong thing, and when they're adamant about what they want done, I'll do it their way, and it'll be the wrong way, and they won't get any kind of result they like.
Well, how do you do your research? I mean, what's the methodology that you use? Give us an example before we get into the Obama situation. Give us some example of what kinds of things you research, what you're looking for.
Well, the truth is, I always start with trying to find a Social Security number because. And at the very least, a date of birth. Now, I do a lot of criminal defense work, so that is never an issue. They are now, I think, withholding from attorneys the Social Security numbers, but we always have at least the date of birth. And there are ways for me to find Social Security numbers. I have different ways of doing it. I use that. I always start at the computer, and knowing that the databases are not as reliable as people might think. But with that in mind, I can get a basic background on someone, and it'll point me in different directions to go. And it depends on what the case is. You know, if it's a civil suit, I start looking into the background of the person on the other side, and I work both plaintiff and defendant. I mean, I think of myself as somebody who is neutral, and it's a hard thing to explain to somebody you're trying to interview. Yes, I was hired by such and such attorney, and they are paying me, but my job is to just find out the truth. It is to be neutral. And once they really believe that and understand it, then they're very helpful. And my job is to find out the truth.
So you don't have a dog in the race other than to just get the facts, the truth.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Nobody's ever put it that way before, but that's exactly the way it is. I pride myself on the fact that I don't do anything dishonest, and there's a ton of PIs who will. I'm truthful in my dealings with people. If I go to somebody's door, I don't pretend I'm somebody other than I am. I tell them who I am and what I'm doing and why. And I think with those maybe 2 exceptions in the last 18 years of people not welcome me into their home, because somehow they just instinctively know I really mean what I'm saying.
Oh, yeah. So you've developed these skills, these research skills over the years, and of course computers, I'm sure computer databases has made it much easier for you over the course of 18 years. And so tell us how you got involved in the Obama Social Security number issue.
Well, like everybody else. I mean, truthfully, I did not vote for him. I didn't like the other choice either, but I had to vote for somebody. I did not vote for Obama just because he reminded me of Bill Clinton. There was something sleazy about him that was unsettling that I really couldn't put my finger on. But there was something about him I did not like. And when I saw him start that mad dash for the money with the TARP, with the stimulus, and everything had to be done now or the sky was going to fall in. Because of the work I do, I'm very sensitive to very small things. And something was very, very unsettling to me. And I was talking to one of my clients, and his sentiments were exactly the same. And he said, I want to hire you to look into this guy's background. And I said, well, I'll try, but I'm not going to find anything. He's the president already. There's going to be nothing out there. And if I do find it, I'm going to get in trouble. And I said, but I'll do it anyway. And at first, I have access to a lot of databases that people would not be able to access. And it's because I'm licensed. And, and I run a legitimate company, and I've never had a problem with any of my clients or anything all these years. I started looking at the databases. The bigger ones, there was nothing on, and not surprisingly, but I found a couple of smaller ones, and up pops the Social Security number. And, Andrea, I've done this work for a long, long time, and the minute it came up and said issued 77 to 79 in Connecticut, I knew instantly that it was a phony. And when it came up, what I did is I then just ran the Social Security number, and then I came up with addresses all over Illinois, law offices, his home address where he used to live, Massachusetts when he was going to Harvard, Washington, D.C. as a senator. From 1986 on, this was the number he was using. And that means he started using it at the age of 25. Now, I got to believe that somewhere between 15 and 25, there's another number.
Well, didn't he have a job, as I read earlier, with Baskin-Robbins when he was a teenager and still in Hawaii?
Well, that's the story. You know, I mean, what can we believe?
Okay, so there was you never found another Social Security number issued to him in his name?
No, didn't find one for Barry Soetoro either.
So this is the only Social Security number that is in the name of Barack Hussein Obama. This Social Security number?
No? There were other ones, but they were. I could never prove that it was him. The other numbers came up, and that's been discussed, you know, by other people, that his name was associated with other Social Security numbers. I found some myself, but I could not prove that like I'd have with the Connecticut one. I just, you know, and it's meaningless if it's just something that appears on a database.
When you said just a few moments ago that you agreed to investigate, but you said if I find something, I might get in trouble. Well, what did you mean by that?
Well, I figured that somebody'd come knocking on the door, you know, that somebody from one of these databases would have informed the authorities, you know, the FBI, Secret Service, somebody, and they would have come knocking on the door saying, why are you looking at the president?
Has that
and I
happened?
would have told them. No, it never happened.
Jack Cashel, author of Deconstructing Obama, has written several articles, and I have to issue a correction here because in the email promo that I did for tonight's show, I said that you had been mentioned in Jack's book. Not true. You've been mentioned in at least one article, maybe even more, that he's written about the Social Security number. And of course, you've been mentioned, as I said, in Dr. Jerry Corsi's book, Where's the Birth Certificate?
Right.
One of the things that Jack Cashel brought out was that let's see, I want to just read this here. Jack, of course, maintains that Obama did not write his own autobiography, Dreams from My Father. He maintains that Bill Ayers, founder of the communist militant Weather Underground, actually wrote the book, and that later he and his wife Bernadine Dorn were involved in getting Social Security numbers and identities for people who were criminals.
Right. And that's who I think probably came up with Obama's.
Now, why? See, this is the thing that puzzles me is why would Obama feel the necessity for having a fraudulent Social Security number when he supposedly was a resident of Hawaii and could have very easily obtained one as a citizen of Hawaii?
Right, as his half sister did. Hers is a Hawaiian number. He could have.
Very strange.
In fact, well, he could not have. There is no way that he could have gotten a Connecticut Social Security number. Legitimately, there is no way. The possibility does not exist.
Explain
because
why.
Now they've changed the wording in the Social Security Administration in their sections online that it throws in something about zip codes. That was never in there before. It said before that it was based on your residency, where you lived when you applied for it. I have been able to pin down that number that he uses was issued the last 2 weeks of March in 1977. He was 15 years old at the time and in the 10th grade at Punahou in Hawaii. There's no explanation for him having a Connecticut number.
He's never been a resident of Connecticut. He's probably never been to up to that point had never been to Connecticut that we know of.
It never mentioned in anything that he ever talked about or put in his books. No, not only that, there would be, it's a form called an SS5, and it's a handwritten, it's like a 4x8 card, and you fill it out with your residence and everything, and then they put a number in the upper right-hand corner when you turn it in, and that becomes your number. That becomes your number for good. Well, I have the number. I have a copy from Social Security of the handwritten one, the number before his, because his ends in 25. I have 24 and 29, and the reason I was able to get those two is because both those people are deceased, and once you're deceased, there is no expectation of privacy. I know exactly when they got theirs, and his would have had to fall in between.
Also, the number was previously that of a Harrison Bunnell.
No, that's not true.
Okay.
There is a guy that did a lot of work, and he did some really good work on the property of that is allegedly owned by the Obamas, but is not owned by them at all and never has been. What he did is when he ran that address, the name Harrison Bunnell came up with Obama's Social Security number. But I cautioned him not to jump to any conclusions. I said, you have something on a piece of paper, but you have no proof that he used that name. You know, I said, that could be a typo. I said, you always have to be very careful with Social Security numbers. You can't just run around and accuse people of using them, stealing them, or something, because sometimes there are typos. And I said, no. I have tried for 2 years. I've never been able to find out who originally had that number. But it was, I believe, it's in fact on something I came up with. It says that it belonged to somebody from 1890. And my theory is that a person, see, Social Security didn't start till 1935, and it was voluntary. So a lot of people in this country never got them. My theory is that somebody that was born in 1890, in the year of 1977, they would have been 87 years old, may have gotten sick and needed health care coverage but could not get it without having a Social Security number. And that's how I believe that number was assigned. I don't know if it was a man or a woman. I do know it was Connecticut, but I don't know exactly where in Connecticut it would have been. But and people want to think that it was assigned to Obama then. No, it was not. He stole it later. He didn't start using it till 1986. And he was 25 at the time. So when he was in California, you know, if that was the number he was using, there would have been a California addresses come up for him too.
And there wasn't.
No.
Huh. How interesting. What do you make of this? I mean, you know, I know you deal with the facts and that's it, but you must be able to come up with some deduction as a result.
What do you something? Why else would somebody use a different Social Security number than the one that they had before? There's only one explanation. They are hiding something.
And if somebody was going to do that, now putting aside Obama, if somebody was going to get a whole new identity using a different Social Security number, typically why would somebody do that? To hide maybe a criminal background, or
could maybe just maybe he didn't go to Occidental. Maybe he went there as a foreign student. Maybe he went there with a foreign student number. And
so he didn't have a Social Security number at the time.
Right. So the ones they assign to students, I used to know how it worked, but it's been so many years. But they started out with 3 specific numbers for students. And I think it's highly likely that he went there as a foreign student and got financial aid.
Mhm. Mhm. Well, and that would make sense because he was listed, wasn't he, as a citizen of Indonesia?
Yes, and as a Muslim.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, he was adopted. He was adopted.
Yeah.
And yes, it would make complete sense.
Now, so he got a Social Security number through questionable means.
Well, the one thing that you said earlier about when you were talking about dreams from my father, I read where Michelle Obama was quoted as saying that Barack was writing this book and had writer's block. So he turned everything, all his notes and tapes and everything, over to Bill Ayers to finish it for him. But in the meantime, Obama has always said that Ayers he didn't really know him. It was just some guy from the neighborhood.
Right. Their kids went to the same school.
Those are quite contradictory statements.
Yeah. Well, they've been tripped up and caught in so many lies that
everything.
I mean, it's a given now that the man is just a pathological liar, and I believe that she is as well. Although she doesn't have to open her mouth.
I absolutely agree.
Yeah. So now he's got this fake Social Security card, Social Security number, and then he has to register for the draft.
Well, I believe that was all constructed in 2008 when they were doing all this other stuff too.
So he got
and the reason I say that is somebody got a copy of the letter he would have received upon signing up for selective service. Mm-hmm. And it's a dear registrant, yada, yada, and below, clip and put in your wallet card. I mean, it is a copy of the letter he would have received. The only problem is the form says May 07 on it. And it says on the card that's attached to the letter that he signed up in September of 1980. Well, in an interview, he said he signed up immediately after he graduated from high school in 79. I mean, nothing is true. Now, if you look, too, on his application is the only one where the year 1980 is not stamped on it. Every other one that I put together, I think I have a half a dozen examples of people that had filled out their selective service cards within a day or two or three of him. Theirs are all stamped 1980. I think what happened is they couldn't come up with a 1980 stamp, so they took a 2008 stamp and cut off the two and the zero, and then just flipped the stamp over and stamped 80 on it.
Oh. Boy, these people knew what they were doing.
Oh, yeah. Well, you've got hundreds, if not thousands, of people who are complicit in this fraud that has been perpetrated on the country.
Mhm. Mhm. You know what amazes me?
This is not a one-man show. This is hundreds of people. I mean, everybody in the Hawaii Department of Health ought to be in jail.
Yeah. Wow. You know what amazes me, too, is that with all of I had applied for a civil service job with NASA. And when I was applying for the job, I was required to fill out a form, a government form, and I don't remember it has a number assigned to it. It's like, and it was pages and pages and pages and pages. I thought, my God. I mean, they wanted to know, had I ever been out of the country? They wanted to know who had my friends been. The FBI went and called on some people that I had listed on there to verify that I was who I said I was. I mean, they literally cleaned my teeth. I mean, they really vetted me. And this was just as a job as a public information officer for NASA. So my question here is, how does he get to be president without the same thing? I mean, this is a man who is privy to top secret classified information.
I can tell you how he did it in 2 words. George Soros.
My God, is he that powerful that he has power and control over our FBI, over our Department of Justice, over our Secret Service, over our CIA, all of it? The entire intelligence community?
I know the CIA is involved. I know that his grandparents worked for the CIA. I know his mother worked for the CIA. How did he end up going to Pakistan in 1981 when nobody with an American passport was allowed in there? That's what tells me he had another number before. He could not have gotten a passport without having a Social Security number.
And the frightening thing about this is that there are people who have died as a result of searching through that passport. That what's his name, Lieutenant Quarles?
Lieutenant, yeah. Now, and lieutenant is not a military or a law enforcement designation. That's just his name, Lieutenant Quarles Harris.
Mhm. And he was found mysteriously.
They found him with things from the State Department that he wasn't supposed to have, like passport applications and things like that. And from what I'm told, that he agreed to help assist the police. And 1 week after he was arrested, they found him murdered in his own car.
Mm.
These are cutthroat people.
Yeah, they really are. They're very dangerous, very, very dangerous. And when threatened, they become even more so.
Trapped.
Wow. Jack Cashel had written, he said, as to how Obama may have secured that number, it's possible that he turned to his radical friends for advice. Here's what he says, quoting Ayers, "We invented all kinds of ways to obtain false identity papers and got busy building multiple sets of ID for each of us and for every contingency," writes Bill Ayers of his years in the Weather Underground. Quote, "We soon figured out that the deepest and most foolproof ID had a government-issued Social Security card at its heart."
Mm-hmm.
So they knew how to go about it. And then Jack also says that Ayers appears to have commuted between his wife and children in Chicago and Columbia University in New York from 1984 to 1987, while Obama left New York, where he too had attended Columbia, and arrived in Chicago in 1985. Mm-hmm. So you track down the many uses of the 042 Social Security number in Chicago, as you mentioned, in Massachusetts and in Washington. How is it that those numbers have appeared in all of those different places?
Well, that's because they were addresses where he lived. That's
they were attached to the address.
That's how they put together these databases. They use applications for rents. Car purchases. Credit cards. That's how they're compiled with all the various things in your life.
Yeah. What is just astonishing to me, Susan, is that he's gotten away with it. Like you said, there are so many people involved. I mean, there are people who are on the payroll right now that are paid to come into chat rooms and go on blog sites to be disruptive,
to
create mayhem.
Make people like us look bad. It won't work though. I mean, as Jack Cashel pointed out, every excuse they've tried to give for the Connecticut Social Security number has not worked. My favorite one is where they said, it was a typographical error or he just wrote badly. And instead of the number being 96826, which is the zip code where he lived at, that it was 06826. Now, it just so happens Connecticut zip codes start with 068. However, I went to the postal website and I put in zip codes to locate cities, and I dropped the 9 and put in a 0. I put 06826, and it comes up and says it has never been issued as a zip code in Connecticut.
Huh.
every single trick that they have tried to use to prove that I was wrong, I have disproven.
Amazing. You even wrote this year to the Social Security Administration about Obama's Social Security numbers.
Oh yeah, and the Department of Justice.
And what kind of response did you get?
I got a letter back from one of the underlings in the Social Security Administration. I said he's using a fraudulent Social Security number. It was a one-page letter, very brief, about how they're assigned and why he shouldn't have it. And they wrote back and said, we disagree with your conclusions.
And that's it.
Not citing any part of the law or anything. It just, that's what it said. You know, the thing that is really disheartening to me, Andrea, though, is we have all these pseudo politicians out there, you know, pounding their chests and thumping the desks. You know, we have to do something. We have to do something. I have gotten in touch with probably at least 18 of the most vocal of the bunch. You know, Isa, Cantor, Boehner, West, Bachman, everyone you could think of. And ask me if I have gotten a single response from any of them.
They are scared to death of it.
But they're going to pretend they're brave-hearted souls.
Yeah. I know from talking with various people inside Congress, staffers as well as elected representatives, that they don't want to touch this. They're scared to death of it. Now, why?
They probably don't want to die, for one thing. But, I mean, that might be a little extreme. They don't want to lose their jobs. Their jobs and their income is more important than what is going on, the destruction of our country around us. They are thinking today. They're not thinking about what's going to happen next week, next month, next year.
And they use the economy as perfect cover. Well, we have more important, pressing issues to deal with.
Watch, always watch their hands, just like a magician. You know, they're trying to tell you with something to lead you off in a different direction. Pay no attention.
Yeah. Oh, boy. Well, I think that the only thing we're going to be able to do here is vote this guy out.
Well, you know what? I'm not sure that that's going to be possible. And I'll tell you exactly. And people just cringe every time I say that. And I'll tell you why I think so. Because he got in with voter fraud in 2008, and they've had 4 years to work on it. Not only that, he will find a way to give amnesty to all the illegals here to get their votes.
Well, funny you should mention that, because that's exactly what he did over the weekend before he left.
Yeah, I know.
He signed an executive order. Yeah.
I know.
And my question immediately, which was sent to my congressional representative, was, why are we paying you? Why are we paying you a salary?
I contacted my congressman 4 times about this Connecticut Social Security number, and I knew him personally before he was a congressman, because he was a prosecutor, and he has never responded to me, not once. Not only that, he promised that when he was running for office, he swore in his platform that he would only, if he continued to be reelected, he would only stay 10 years and would leave. He's now been there 20. He decided at 10 he still had work to do. Got a divorce, married somebody much younger who was a lobbyist, and the minute they got married, then she opened up her own lobbying firm and is doing quite well.
I swear they go to Washington.
It's disheartening on so many levels.
Yeah. And now they're trying to turn the Tea Party into the boogeyman. We're terrorists.
Well, anytime they start attacking people, pay attention to that, because that means that's who they're afraid of.
Right. We're over the target. We're catching flack. Absolutely. Yeah. Wow. Well, Susan, you certainly have done some amazing work here, and you're very brave to step out and with the truth, with what you know about it. Are you concerned whatsoever for your own safety, or are you pretty much okay with what's going on? I mean, in terms of your own safety.
You know what? I'm one of these people. I believe in God, and I believe our lives just are what they are supposed to be. You know, do I live my life in fear? No. Do I realistically think that something could happen? Of course. I think that I am far safer now than I was 2 years ago because my name has been all over the place with what I've found, and I think that gives me safety. I am licensed to carry a concealed weapon, but if somebody is going to cause you harm, they will find a way to do it.
Yeah.
And no, so am I afraid? No. Am I realistic? Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, boy, I tell you, this is you're right. This is very disheartening. It's beyond comprehension, and really, we the people are the only ones that are going to be able to get this corruption.
That's exactly right. That is exactly right.
Yeah.
I mean, the people that have sat back quietly need to start raising their voices.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
because
not going to be
we're being beaten to death by our own government representatives.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, a while back, and this was quite some time ago, Joseph Farah was invited to be a speaker at the Nashville Tea Party. This was the very first Tea Party convention. And he had a discussion. You may recall this. He had a discussion after the fact that ended up on video with Andrew Breitbart. And of course, we love Andrew because he is just an absolute lion when it comes to taking on the mainstream media. And he said to Joseph at that time, Joseph had spoken about the eligibility issue, and of course, people there were like, some of them were cheering him on, and while others were like, oh God. And Andrew Breitbart afterwards said to Farah, "This is not a winnable issue." And I think that was probably very true at the time. I think that Andrew understood we can't win this issue when we don't have Congress with us, when we don't have the courts with us, when we don't have the Department of Justice with us. Who do we have?
We have no one right now.
We have just ourselves at this point, just ourselves.
Yeah.
And my fear, my concern is that it's going to take more than just another election cycle. For example, if Obama is reelected, we know the polling is showing that his approval rating is tanking. His internals have got to be showing that the numbers are even worse. There's buzzing going on out there. Well, maybe I'd rather be just a successful one-term president, and Michelle and the girls are okay if I don't do this another term.
Michelle is loving spending every penny she's spending. Believe me.
Yeah. Well. And she's a large. She and Valerie Jarrett are a large part of the reason why he is where he is. But here's the thing. I don't know, and this is kind of venturing off the subject here, but I, just for a moment, indulge me. I don't know that his keepers, and we all know he has keepers. He has his masters. That's why he's attached to that BlackBerry. I mean, that was the first thing he had to have. That was BlackBerry.
That was the first tip-off to me.
Yep, me
too. The BlackBerry.
Me too. Yep, that's where he gets his instructions. That's where he's told what to do, what to say, where to go, who to meet with. And but his handlers, seeing what's happening here and seeing also that the Democrat Party is becoming very disenchanted with him, and maybe even on their own trying to come up with a candidate to primary him, they may decide that he's damaged goods, and they may be working on the other side with the Democrats to come up with a candidate to replace him that might be just as bad.
Oh, Hillary, I think, would be worse because she at least has a brain. I think she's far more dangerous than he is because she's of a like mind, but she's smart.
Yeah.
He isn't.
Yeah. I don't know that I would jump.
watch out for Donald Trump. I think he's working with Obama and always thought that.
Yeah, the spoiler.
I think he started that whole thing with the birth certificate to try and take the edge off of the publication of Corsi's book. And now that Obama's numbers are tanking, he's starting to make noise again like he might be an independent candidate. Well, I mean, we're not fools, Donald. We see what you're doing.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's somebody else that I contacted repeatedly who never bothered to get back in touch with me. I mean, I know who the phonies are. I mean, just out of curiosity alone, they should have contacted me.
Yep. Yeah, if he was going to step out and make the kinds of accusations and claims that he did, then why wasn't he paying attention to the people who had a face-to-face meeting with him to explain to him this isn't necessarily about the birth certificate, although that's part of it. This is about the fact that he is not eligible because of his birthright.
Right. Right.
He never brought it up.
Then notice why did he disappear into the background after immediately when the long form birth certificate comes out and it's immediately within hours it's proven to be fraudulent, or forged. How come Trump didn't have anything to say about that? But now, he's coming back in the picture again. Well, I was told that Rahm Emanuel's brother Ari Emanuel in California is Trump's agent.
Yes, I've heard that as well. So there's a connection right there that's very very circumspect.
Of course.
Yeah. And then isn't it interesting how when all of this was erupting, all of a sudden we capture Osama.
Yeah, right. I wonder where they dug him up from.
Oh, I don't
they proved that he had kidney disease 10 years ago. And in fact, I read an article about the CIA had even taken him to a hospital for treatment. They capture him and kill him, but nowhere on the property any kind of dialysis machines or anything. Right. And then we have all the neighbors being interviewed and laughing, saying, "What a joke! He was never there. What are you kidding?" And how come? Why no pictures of the body? They showed on TV pictures of American soldiers hung by the neck from a bridge, in Iran. What is so sacred about the body of Obama that we didn't see pictures of that?
You mean Osama?
I mean Osama. Osama, excuse me. Well, they're so close. Sound. God has a sense of humor, doesn't he? Yeah, I guess it was unintentional. I'm an Osama.
I mean, the fact that they are only one letter apart from one another.
It makes it hard. Makes it difficult.
Well, I mean, it does, but I mean, that's what I'm saying. I mean, God has a sense of humor.
Yes, he does. He
does
have a sense of humor. I look at my life and I realize that.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, we had I don't know if you've heard of her or not, Ann Barnhart. She's quite an outspoken young lady.
I've read some of her stuff.
I think a lot of people have heard of Ann, and she is steadfast in her resolve, and she is absolutely, she's foursquare, and we had her on the program here a couple of Friday nights ago, after she had written the piece that she did about when the Navy SEALs, the Chinook helicopter with the Navy SEAls went down, killing them all, and her theory about that is that it's all a setup. And that these we don't even know for sure if these Navy SEAls were on board that Chinook. They may not have even been on board. We know nothing about it. And and the timing of it, again, is very, very suspicious. So Lieutenant Quarles Harris might not be the only victim in this
Oh,
regime's.
Keep in mind the two men that were executed in Chicago in November, December of '07. There were 3 gay men died in a 6-week period in 40 days that belonged to Reverend Wright's church, and the 2 were executed, and the one died of AIDS.
Yeah. Well,
and the one
then we
claimed to be, involved with Obama.
Yeah. Well, last
Friday
night,
and I saw an interview with his mother where she said that's why she thinks her son was killed.
Yeah. We interviewed last Friday night the publisher and editor of a website called Hillbuzz, hillbuzz.org, so named because the publisher was a supporter of Hillary's. He lives in Chicago. He is gay. He's a member of what they call Boys Town in Chicago, and the gay community there, they're pretty well connected. They all know one another, et cetera. And he said that it is absolutely understood. It's common knowledge that Obama is a frequenter of what is it called, Man's Country, which is a gay.
He's a lifetime member. Him and Rahm.
This is so
the little ballerina, as Rush Limbaugh refers to him.
Yep, the little ballerina. So, I mean, there are people out there who know, there are disparate pieces of information coming from different people that when you put this together like a puzzle, you get the picture, you see the picture, and the picture is like walking into Mordor in Lord of the Rings.
Right.
It's a frightening place.
Yes, it is. And people have no idea how alarmed they should be.
Yeah.
They have no clue.
Yeah.
Of what is going on. They are even the conservatives, they're living in denial. Until it touches them directly, they're not going to pay attention.
No, I agree. And the media, I tell you, I tell my listeners more and more lately, I am so off of Fox News. I am so
I have nothing to do with it. After I saw O'Reilly and his lie about the Connecticut Social Security number.
Oh, yeah.
That was outrageous.
Him and Megyn Kelly sitting there together that night. Well, I've seen the birth certificate, he said. And, of course, why would they place the birth announcements in the newspaper like they knew he was going to be president someday? It's like, are you really that stupid? Or are you just that craven for the dollar that you're making every payday?
I think it's both of those.
Yeah.
D, all of the above. He's worthless.
Yeah.
And when I saw what Hannity did with Jerry Corsi, canceling him hours before he was supposed to do an interview on the day that Jerry's book was released, with no explanation. I just thought that was just inexcusable.
Well,
and I've never watched Fox since.
No, right.
I have no use for any of them.
Yeah.
Keep in mind, though, a large part of Fox is owned by a Saudi prince. People keep losing sight of that fact, and don't think that doesn't come into play.
And Rupert Murdoch, who is now under investigation, the entire News Corp operation because of the email and phone hacking that they did, and all of all of that. I mean, this is obviously a corporation with no core values, at least solid positive values.
Well, karma is a wonderful thing because it gets you when you least expect it.
Yeah. True. That's true. Well, I'll tell you, Susan Daniels, it has been a real pleasure talking with you this evening. I've really enjoyed getting to know you, and I've heard of you, I've read of you many times, and I'm delighted that you took the initiative to contact me, and we're going to have you on again. Next time you come up with something else, you let me know. We'll get you on to talk about it.
I appreciate so much you allowing me on your show, Andrea. I've wanted to be on it for so long, and finally I said no. It's time to ask.
Your timing's perfect too. It really is, because we had an availability tonight, so it worked out just fine. Well, keep up the good work, Susan Daniels, and we will talk with you again soon. We'll be watching for more information that you might come up with, that you might unearth as time goes forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea. You have a good evening.
Thank you. You too. You too. Take care. All right. Bye-bye. Susan Daniels is the name, and she is she's quite a gal. Susan Daniels and Associates out of Ohio, and brave woman, brave woman.
The only people who don't want to disclose the truth are people with something to hide.